Hey, you're watching Half Asian Tarot Queen. I am Lisa. I have a whole different stack of decks today, mixing it up. So I'm going to start out with Radiant Wise Spirit, and we'll go from there. There's definitely been a lot of interesting stuff. Like I've been, for a while, telling the story of this like big shift that's been happening sort of like in the realm of energy, but this week it's starting to surface like in the realm of three-dimensional reality. So it's really interesting because it's just sort of like this affirmation, you know, like you kind of do all this work and you have this faith that it's gonna happen at some point, but it's like right now it's just like, wow, this is really happening, you know. So it's big. Okay, so this flipped out. The Eight of Cups, like walking away from some situation that no longer serves you, maybe something that you've invested a lot into. So there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in that, you know. We have the Knight of Swords. It's going right towards that Eight of Cups. And we have the Ace of Wands. So it's just like there's a message of truth or clarity coming in right towards this that's maybe going to trigger this sort of like moving on. And there's this passionate, fiery new start. So that's really interesting. I'm just checking out the cards underneath. Yeah, so it's like right underneath this, we have Justice. So I think that message of truth or clarity might have something to do with justifying some sort of situation. And then like finally moving on from whatever the injustice was. And then underneath this passionate fiery start, it's like there's been this blockage, you know, this dissonance, this sort of like a blockage, which has been stopping someone from moving forward. And I think that's like kind of like what's being justified. It's like this is being brought into balance. So it looks like it might have something to do with like some sort of financial situation where like you've been like giving more than you've been receiving, and like it looks like this is going to be being brought into balance, and we're finally going to be able to like move forward from it. So there's that. I'm going to go to, well actually next I'm going to go to the Mystical Shaman Oracle and see what we get for that. So this is kind of like, I feel like that last deck was more on the ground reality, like what's surfacing, and then this is kind of like an indicator of what's happening in the more like ethereal realms. So we'll see what kind of indicators we get. Oops, that just flipped out. Okay, wow. Okay, this is really interesting. So this flipped out the Moon. So this really speaks to like the cycles of life. It speaks to like there being like everything has its like place in time. Like it speaks to divine timing and these natural rhythms of life. It's interesting because there's this full moon in the middle of it, so it almost like implies that whatever this is that's happening might kind of climax at the time of the full moon, which is coming up like in just a few days from now. And then we have Middle World. So this is really interesting because this, like I was just saying, this deck speaks to like what's happening from the more like ethereal realms, but this specific card speaks to the middle world, like the three-dimensional reality, the bubble of reality that we all live in. And that's interesting because there's like all these birds in the bubble. So like to me, like I always think of this as like some truth sort of surfacing in like three-dimensional reality. It's just like, for example, like if somebody is like trying to hide something, they'll like try to hide it from coming to the surface, you know, and in the process of that, like all kinds of craziness ensues, you know. But this speaks to like maybe this kind of being reconciled at the time of the full moon, bubbling up, everything bubbling up and being out in the open, clarifying things and justifying them, things being brought into balance, and then finally moving on from whatever this situation is. Okay, I'm going to go to Goddess Guidance Oracle. I'm just going to pick a couple from here, or maybe do some kind of split, or see what pops out. I'm just going to do a little shuffle. I haven't used this deck in a long time, but I really like it, and I also really like how it shuffles. Okay. Wow. Okay. Interesting. This is an interesting message. Okay, so we got solace, bodies of water. Spend time near water, such as a lake, river, or the ocean to recharge your batteries. And Isolde, undying love. The love you have shared is eternal, regardless of the situation. So this really speaks to this moment of self-care for whatever this is that's coming to the surface. Like, and like, know that even if you might have to walk away from some situation that's no longer serving you, like the love is eternal. And so, but it might need some time to reincarnate into some other form, because it seems like this connection it's, you know, pretty toxic in its current incarnation. Okay, I'm going to go to the White Sage Tarot. Pick a few cards from here. I really love this deck. It was made by like a Minneapolis. It was made in Minneapolis, which is where I lived for a long time. So this deck I love. Oh, right when I pull it out the box, the Ten of Swords at the bottom. So it's like the end of some sort of situation. Oh my gosh. Then the Three of Swords just plopped out, like, so yeah, whatever this situation is, it's like kind of speaking to some heartbreak. For sure, there's some situation that's been like unjust. It seems like involving a relationship that needs to be brought back into balance. And so that sometimes requires like a separation, you know, and healing, which is kind of what this is speaking to. So, you know, take some time near some bodies of water, like take care of yourself, and like, you know, allow. Oh my gosh. Okay, so at the bottom, we have the Ten of Cups. So this is really good, because that's like total happiness, abundance, like everything you could want or need, like happening. So it's like we're going from this heartbreaking situation, and then the Death card comes right after that, which is just sort of like we're walking through this. It's interesting because I just did this reading the other day, which I'll point to, and it was talking about like walking through this gateway or walking through this portal. Actually, the last two readings sort of spoke to that, and then we have death here. So it's like that's what's happening. We're walking through this, moving on from this moment in time where there's been all this heartbreak, and we're like kind of seizing the reins, coming into balance, you know, coming into command of our like emotions, our like light and our dark. And this is allowing us to move forward towards our wishes coming true. Nine of Cups. So this is really, really good. You know, I mean, this is really speaking to having to like move on from some sort of toxic situation or relationship, and like giving it the space to heal, and kind of like bringing things back into balance, and like this sort of being the time for that to happen. So Wow. Okay, so I'm going to the Law of Attraction cards for a final message. It's really interesting because there's been a lot of readings leading up to this about like sort of like healing from a toxic situation and like, you know, but in the last week or so, there's been a lot of readings about like some person who's been kind of like surrounded by their own community, and like they're kind of like lifting them up from whatever this situationship has been. So it's almost like the community is kind of stepping in to like make this situation right, and allowing it to heal, like whatever the situation. It's almost like an intervention, you know, like between this relationship that is like really unhealthy for someone, and like needing to like be brought into balance. And so there's a lot about the truth coming out, like things being out in the open, and then, you know, kind of having to separate from that situation to allow excuse me, for healing to come in. Okay. So yeah, the first card, this is so perfect. It says, I'm learning to allow well-being in. It's like this person is sort of like hiding, you know, because it's almost like they're like shell-shocked from whatever the abuse is. Like, I mean, I think that's a normal reaction when people are abused, to just sort of like, you know, go into their shell and like not allow the help in that's gonna help them, you know. But like this, so this person, she's like, they're like peeking out from under the rubble. And it says, the art of allowing is, I am that which I am, and I am pleased and joyful in it, and you are that which you are, and while you are different from that which I am, I can allow that, for it is also good. So it's like allowing for the healing to come in without sort of like losing your sense of like each of us being sort of like independent souls almost. It's like a non-codependent way of uniting, you know. Okay, I know who I really am. Wow, this is really interesting because these messages are really related. I know who I really am. You are an extension of non-physical energy. You are indeed an extension of that which we are. We are known as teacher, and we are known as Abraham, and we are together because of our matching intentions and desires. So, wow, that's really beautiful. It's almost like, instead of like, it's like the productive way to work together with other people is like towards like a common vision where you can work together, and but you are each independent parts of that vision, and instead of like a situation of like abuse where someone's like giving more than they, you know, deserve or should, and other person is taking, like this is like a model for productive relationships. So this is really a wow, like message, like someone has like moving on from like almost like a codependent toxic situation, and it's hard because there's like all this history and emotion, you know, tied into it, but they're moving on towards, it's like they've done all this work on healing themselves so that they can actually engage the world in this more productive way. And that's like a really beautiful beginning, a fresh start. So yeah, it's a really interesting message, and it's really positive. So it's like you know, one step at a time. Like, the world wasn't built in a day, and so it's just like, you know, keep moving forward towards a better tomorrow.